Okie dokie. This lighting is a little bit harsh. Okay, here we go. All right, everybody. Hey, waving back at ya. I'm just waiting for more people to join so that we can get on with today's edition of Future Conversation. As you know the drill already, Temisan and I have been enjoying the wonderful pleasure of connecting with some Future Africa Awards alumni. I had an incredible conversation last week that kicked off everything with Ali Nuhu, and I know Temisan also spoke to Lala Kindoju, both conversations which were mind-blowing, so many lessons to be learned, and I know today is going to be no different. Hey, honey Ojuku, hey girlfriend, back at you. So while we just wait for a few more people to tune in, I know you guys have already seen the press, you've already seen the adverts, so you know that today we will be in conversation with Jake Effoduh. Now, I'm really, really excited about speaking to Jake Effoduh because of the climate that we're in right now. From right here at home, you know, if we're talking about advocacy, I always think it's important for us to start the conversation at home. And right now, there are so many conversations regarding community action taking place here in Nigeria, here in Africa. And of course, we all know the bigger conversation happening in America. Concerning the shooting of George Floyd. We've seen the riots, the protests, those images that we've been seeing from across America. And, you know, more than ever, community action, advocacy is a huge, huge conversation. Okay, I see Jake is online, so I'm going to send him an invite now. I think he's already sent me a request for us to get on with it and have our conversation of the day. Going live here on the Future Africa Awards platform, having a future conversation with Jake Effoduh, who's our 2014. Jake, hey!
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
Very good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, and it's good to see you in good spirits because I know a lot of people are stressed right now. There's
I
a lot going
know.
on in the world. Wow. So I
Yeah,
this is right. You're staying positive. I know you
definitely.
have roots all around the world, but where are you physically at the moment?
Right now I'm in Toronto,
You're in Toronto.
in Canada, and I'm like finding ways to get back home very soon. But right now I'm in Canada, so
And
just staying put, waiting for the lockdown to ease off completely so we
right,
can move.
exactly. Tell me, what's the mood like in Canada? Because, you know, we thought that we were dealing with COVID-19, but 2020 is throwing every single thing at us. What's the mood like right now in Toronto?
It's getting better, I would say. Over 40,000 people infected with the virus, but over 20,000 people have recovered. So that's good news. It's
Yes.
the cases are not as alarming as we have in Nigeria, but it's I think everybody everywhere is affected if they're not infected with COVID somewhere, somehow. So I'm happy that things are gradually getting better, and
Yeah.
I look forward to being in Nigeria very, very soon.
Right? We look forward
Yeah.
to having you back as well. So, you know, we're going to cover a lot of topics during this conversation, but we only have a few minutes. So let's start from the beginning, which is, of course,
Okay.
with you winning the Future Awards, Future Africa Awards in Community Action for
Yep.
2014. What was that sentiment like? Because we don't get a lot of nods for people doing advocacy work in Africa. So tell me what the feeling was winning this award over 6 years ago. Over 6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago, actually. Feels like yesterday.
Right.
I
Oh,
remember
really?
it.
That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I remember it very well. It was on, I think it was 5 days to my birthday in December 2014. I'd made my way all the way from the cool of Abuja to the crazy of Lagos. Sitting in the hall with other nominees and celebrities was very refreshing and rewarding already. And then being announced as the winner of the Future Africa Prize for Advocacy was like so surreal. I felt really, really grateful. I felt appreciated. I felt rewarded. You know, it was such an empowering moment for me. I can't remember even what I said on stage. I was so out of my mind.
So you
But
didn't write a speech in advance. You just spoke off the cuff.
I didn't. But to find something you're really passionate about and then to secure the opportunity to do it is an honor. And then to be awarded for it feels like double honor. So I was really, really appreciative of it. I still remember every single second of that day.
But I mean, you're very humble because you're a high flyer. I mean, besides being a partner at Praxis and Gnosis Law at the moment, you're the founder of Law to Go. But you've also, got your accolades from, not accolades, but you've got you've served your time at the Oxford University as well, amongst many globally sort of progressive and institutions that are at the absolute peak of the legal or any career, actually, any fraternity and any industry.
Yeah.
What of everything that you've done, what is it that you feel has made you and your work most noticed?
I think the Future Awards Prize was really remarkable because irrespective of what you do and where you go, everyone feels there's a need to feel like you're doing the right thing, like you're appreciated or you're seen. That visibility, that encouragement is really, really important. I think when I won the award, it was important for my work, despite my achievements, because it motivated me to scale up my advocacy. I did not only gain I did not only gain like much more resonance or confidence, but several people around me reached out to me and saying, "Hey, that inspired them to do the same thing or just to gain stimulus for their own kinds of advocacy." And subsequently after that, just scaling up my work beyond Nigeria, West Africa, and the continent as a whole, I was able to win the Human Rights and Advocacy Award for 2015, Africa Youth Choice Awards, and then in 2016, I became the Africa Broadcaster of the Year. So it was not just an award, but being a part now of the TFAA alumni, and I'm still active and very collaborative with other nominees and awardees. The TFA was just like a step up for the kinds of advocacy I was doing. So it meant so much, so much to me.
That's incredible. Now let's look at your work in advocacy. What are some of the causes that you're most passionate about?
Human rights, and I know it's very broad because in Nigeria, I always say every Nigerian should be a human rights activist because there's a huge gap.
African, I think.
Every African, absolutely, because there's a huge gap with the recognition and the enforcement of human rights on the African continent. If you think back in history with the way that colonization has deeply, deeply eaten off our development and how it's reminiscent even to today, if it's not girl child education, if it's not the right to preserve our environment or the right from other people stealing our resources or rights of minorities, sexual and gender minorities, LGBTQI rights, or rights of children to education, rights to access to healthcare, food. We have a huge gap when it comes to the recognition of human rights and the enforcement of same. So it's difficult for me to say, oh, I do human rights, but only this. I do human rights, but only that. As an human rights advocate, I advocate for human rights. So whatever it is that would advance the lives of people, I'm in. However way that I can contribute or add my voice, definitely in as well.
And, when I started this conversation, I was saying that, this is a pretty, I think it's an incredible time for us to have this conversation because of what's happening in the world at the moment. And there's a massive conversation happening in the advocacy space about us lending our voices, let's say, to just give comparisons of two extremes on social media and hashtags versus what we're now seeing going on with regards to the protests and the riots. And, there are several people who are finding their feet in the advocacy space, and they want to understand, how do you find the right place for yourself on this broad spectrum of actions that can be taken? And all of those actions, I want to say as well, do have their own merit. But where do we find ourselves, especially in an African context where our rights are not as well protected as those that we are watching live on CNN right now, protesting in Atlanta, Minneapolis. The rights are not as protected, but however, the inequalities are also much more stark. How does a young African advocate find their way?
Very important question because I think everyone has to start from where they can and where they are. People think advocacy starts when you get to the junction or when you get to the streets. People think, oh, I have to have a placard, a banner, I have to join an NGO. Absolutely not. And people always ask me, how do you demonstrate advocacy if you don't have money, if you don't have a voice, if you don't have no key position in government? And that question helps me to define for myself what advocacy is. I think I don't see advocacy through a position of influence. I believe that advocacy is an activity, just a commitment to do something, anything you can do that is positive towards addressing an adaptive challenge. That is advocacy to me. So it doesn't have to be with a hashtag. It can start from your parlor, just ensuring that your father understands gender equality, that, a woman's place and a man's place are on equal footing. That consciousness can start from the parlor and can move to your community by saying, can we all come together and ensure that we don't litter this public road, or can we share duties? House A sweeps here, House B sweeps. That's what advocacy is about. But of course, it scales higher to much more nationalistic or a much more global perspective, where the issue is institutional. For example, what we're seeing in the US with blacks being killed because of their race by the people who are meant to protect them. Of course, then you need your voices heard both on social media, on the streets, in the departments where these things are happening, and beyond. So advocacy is just like, it's omnipresent, I would say. I feel you can engage as an advocate. You don't need to go to school to become an advocate. You just have to demonstrate that passion for change, that passion to institute an adaptive challenge. And that's what advocacy, to me, is about.
And how do we do that while preserving our security here in Africa? Because I think a lot of people do have an innate advocacy in them. Growing up in Africa, you experience one, if it's not one thing, it's another. You definitely experience something. But what holds most of us back is fear. So how are we able to do this in a way that's secure and safe?
So yes, I know that even as an advocate, I myself have faced a lot of risks and abuse, sometimes even just the pushback from the government, but I mean, I can say 3, 4, maybe 5 ways I feel people can tackle the advocacy, especially if they're at risk or if they're touching a very sensitive topic, things like religion, sexuality, those things are like off areas in our communities. But also doing an advocacy that engages the government is also quite risky. So I would say, number one, collaborate, right? We need to seek and find allies. Never do advocacy alone. I would also say, 2, be strategic. We have to be strategic. We need to know when, where, how, why, which, what, and whose platform is the best to be able to deliver the message I want to deliver. I think we have to be informed as well. As a lawyer myself, if you're going to challenge a legislation or a law, you have to know the law you're challenging. Like, if you don't know the process of the law, then you would just be making noise or shouting. I would also say we need to be creative. As young people, as advocates within the continent, there's so many ways to fry a bunch of plantain. You can engage people face to face. You can engage them online. What I've said is, as an advocate, you have to be determined to always be creative. If you can't talk to them face to face, let's say they block the door to National Assembly, you can hashtag them and make sure you tension them on the internet. If they block you on the internet, you might want to go abroad. Find allies abroad where they like to go for those UN classy meetings where they wear suits. Go there and tell them that that's a lie. These guys are not doing what they say they're doing. If that doesn't work, sometimes you can appeal to their conscience. The person you're trying to see reasons with you, sometimes they have somebody who can help you tailor your message better. Maybe it's their pastor. Maybe it's their imam. Maybe it's one celebrity that they look up to. You know what I'm saying? So the ability to be creative is very important, and not to sort of take personal glory or personalize your advocacy is very important. And then finally, you mentioned risk and security. I always say have a backup plan. When you're dealing with advocacy that has to do with the government, remember that the government, they have police, they have army, and you just have you and your people, your family. So think of your safety and your security. It's very important. Know when it's a good time to sort of backtrack, and know when it's a good time to actually scale up.
And, still on safety and security, I find that a lot of people keep quiet in times when their voices are needed most out of fear, simply out of fear. Again, this is something that's a big conversation at the moment, where all this is happening in the world, and people are looking at certain people, certain personalities, and saying, you have this platform, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you doing anything? How do we handle those situations where people expect us to advocate for something, but we have our own reasons, fear probably being at the very top of it, for choosing to remain silent?
I mean, look at you, for example. You're a celebrity and you're engaging in this very important conversation. And I don't think people are asking celebrities to, give a part of their estate. I didn't, it just being someone that people revere and look up to, the responsibility given to you comes with, there's a responsibility attached to that right and privilege that you have. All the great leaders I know who have existed, they have one characteristic in common, and I think it's their willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxiety of their people in their time. So just think about if Martin Luther King was scared, if Nnamdi Azikiwe was scared, right? Like, imagine how many lives would have been lost based on the fear or anxiety of a particular leader or otherwise. I mean, I think some guy called Brian Levy, South African, he wrote something about governance activism for inclusive development. And it's just the idea that even if you don't want to say something, you can, because we always think of advocacy as out there, out there, out there. It can be a phone call saying, hey, this is me as a celebrity. I'm calling my producer. It can be calling your network and saying, what do we do about this? What can we say? It could even be telling a story. How can I use my talent as a music artist? Because me, I'm a legal practitioner, I'm a lawyer. All I know is I want to go to court. I want to fight that law. I want to seek justice, right? But sometimes not everybody is familiar with the law, but they might want to listen to music from Asha. They might want to watch a movie acted by Genevieve. You know what I'm saying? And these things matter. You might want to wear a dress made by some that tells a story. So being an advocate, really, that's why I keep saying everybody needs to be an advocate. Everyone needs to. Because if you are silent, then it means you're complicit. If all that's happening in the US, you just keep quiet. All that's happening in the country, you just keep quiet. It means you're okay with it. It means you support it. So there's no place for fear or silence. You have to turn that fear to action in some way or form.
I absolutely love what you've just said, which is that, because I think we all get caught up in, did they post? Did they use the hashtag? I love the fact that you're saying there's so many ways to express our advocacy and our, or should I say, our dislike or opposition, condemnation of something that may be going on. Now, having said that, with this incredibly busy year, funny enough, 2020, we're only 6 months in, but it's already been the busiest year in ages, but we've been sitting at home for the whole time.
2020 is a year that we would never forget. We would never forget this year. And I think for me, the lockdown changed the way we perceive freedom. We've seen that freedom is a privilege and that uncertainty is the new normal. So I mean, through this lockdown, I was like, oh, first thing that I had to learn was adaptability. I had to learn to be adaptive because it tests my limits. Being adaptive is not just about staying comfortable with unexpected change, but about accepting uncertainties and navigating them very well, knowing that there's some things I can't change, you can't change, and it's fine not to be able to do anything about these things, right? But also it has given me an opportunity to just be grateful for the little things. With over 372,000 people who have died of COVID, and it's just June, 372K. Things like self-appreciation has become a new vibe. So even if I'm not wealthy, even if I don't get that promotion, even if I got a rejection, at least I'm still alive. It's okay to be scared and frightened, but nothing matters more right now than staying healthy and staying alive. So in times like this, just loving and respecting ourselves, valuing the little steps and little wins, these things have become huge gifts.
Now, in a year like 2020, to put it in your words, a year that we will never forget, who do you feel would be deserving, if it were up to you, to nominate somebody for the prize for community action or advocacy for the Future Africa Awards 2020? Who would you nominate in such a historic milestone monumental year? I'm putting you on the spot right now because I know everybody's looking at you like, well, tell us. Who's caught your attention? Who's work
as an advocate, my eyes are always on the ground. I'm always looking at who are the young people who are doing amazing things or even doing it better than I can. Because as an advocate, you need to be informed. You need to know who are the people that are potential partners, who are doing great work, and how can we support them as well. Out of the many people I could nominate, there's a particular guy called Abdullahi Mutala. He's a 28 years old gentleman. He's an advocate for human security and a climate security activist. So this is not the kind of guy you always see in the big cities. He's always like in the Middle East, I said Middle East. Sorry, it's always like in the Northeast. Sorry,
Okay, okay.
always like in the Northeast part of of Nigeria. He has advocated for peace and security from a very young age, including security in Lake Chad and the Sahel and name it. So, well, you may have seen him on Al Jazeera or AIT or read his articles on on the BBC. But when it comes to human security and climate security, this is the guy. Super, super intelligent, super, super passionate. He's gone to places I would not even dare go, even if they're going to pay me money and add a carton of Indomie on top. And currently, he's leading a tree planting project under the Abuja Global Shapers Hub to plant like 5,000, to lead the planting of 5,000 trees against deforestation and biodiversity. So Abdullah Murtala is just one person I think I would nominate because his work is phenomenal in terms of ensuring the value of human security. And, I listened to a webinar he did a couple of days ago where he tied the need for biodiversity to protect us against COVID-19. So, yeah, amongst the very many people that I know are doing amazing, amazing work, Abdullah Murtala is not in our face, because he's always in the field. I think he would be a great person to nominate for the Future Prize for Advocacy.
And I like that he's doing something that's not particularly mainstream. Earlier you did say there's nothing, especially when we look at human rights, there's nothing more important than any other. But I think it's also incredible when we can bring other elements of advocacy to the fore and get them a little bit of attention so that people can join the movements as well. Now, another thing that we're doing, and we're using these conversations to launch, is a telethon called beatingcorona.africa. Now, on the 17th of July, there will be a live broadcast, a 4-hour broadcast, where we're going to celebrate Africa's heroes for beating COVID-19. So these are frontline workers, volunteers, advocates, you name it, anybody who's been involved in just the fight against this horrible pandemic here on the continent. So if you were to nominate somebody for that, today we're giving back. Because you've won it all already. It's not time to pay it forward. So who would you nominate? Whose work has stood out for you during this period?
Yeah, one person's work that has stood out for me in this period is a very young medical doctor called Brian Gabriel Chiedozie Ndubisi. 2 weeks on the announcement of COVID-19, just 2 weeks on the announcement, this guy started to make hand sanitizers in his own apartment, right? He used ethanol, using WHO standards. He used ethanol, he used aloe vera gel, anti-dehydration thickeners, just in his own apartment, lecturing people using social media how to make their own sanitizers. Now, I watched this guy constantly, and he made up to 800 liters of sanitizers. Wow. I'm telling you, this guy took these sanitizers to the Nigerian Medical Association in Lagos and asked them to distribute it across hospitals and homes to people who needed it. So in a month and a half, this young doctor, for free, we know how the struggles can be, he left everything he had to do, created, not only educated people about how to make their sanitizers, but he made 800 liters, quality WHO standard, gave it to the Nigerian Medical Association. Some people would actually sell it, make money off it because there was a huge demand for it. Yeah. But he went to the Nigerian Medical Association in Lagos and said, hey, take it across all the hospitals as possible. And right before our very eyes, we saw NGOs, we saw people, mothers on the street, holding sanitizers made by him with no label, no Namiduam, nothing like that. Just him giving it out to the community. So if I was to give anyone an award, I think he deserves to be one of the people to be considered for the Beating Coronavirus Heroes.
Wow, and I didn't even know the story. So please just repeat his name. Is it Dr.
Brian Chiedozie Ndubisi.
Okay, so we got that. He deserves it. That's for sure. It's incredible, so selfless. And as we start to round up, what do you think the rest of this year looks like? I mean, we can't speak for the whole world because right now it's telling you on your own. It's just woo. But what does Jake's 2020 look like? And, what do you think 2020 looks like in terms of advocacy here on the continent right now? There's outrage, justice for Uwa, justice for Tina. And these are just the names that are in the news. We know there's so many.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're gonna be by December?
Well, people say that no matter how long the night is, the dawn will still break, right?
Yeah.
The music right now has changed, and when the music changed, so does the dance. So it's time for that change to happen. With what we're seeing with all these hashtags on Twitter and justice for all these various individuals, despite the COVID-19 situation, it means that people are hungry and desiring of change, be it in their personal or professional life, or the way that we see things generally as a community. So I feel that by December, hopefully, fingers crossed, we would have dealt with COVID-19 and we would have thought of like, how do we ensure, like, fingers crossed,
I'm crossing it.
how
I'm
do we
toes.
ensure that we don't go back to where we were before COVID, right? So I think the good days are ahead of us. I feel that, if this does not kill us, we would tell the story later. So I know hope is there, and we'll soon be reunited with the freedom that we've been longing for. In the meantime, right, whilst we're not in December yet, we must exemplify courage and determination, things that could spur us to strive for success, be it a campaign, be it calling someone and saying, hey, I support what you're doing, because this lockdown can be very ruthless, but all in all, it will be meritorious in the end, and we'll emerge from this because we've been through hundreds of situations like this before. So I think our generation will be glorious if and only we act now and enact in any way that we can despite COVID-19.
Our generation will be glorious if and only we act now. Those are the words. That's the major key. You've dropped the mic. I'm not going to pick it up again. I think that's the perfect way. Jake, this has been a really incredible conversation. I've really enjoyed picking your brain, and I've seen a lot of comments here. Somebody just says, when will I have a brain like this? Somebody is saying, my friends words of wisdom. So a lot of incredible feedback from everybody watching. But I want to thank you so much for your time that you've given us today for this future conversation. I'm going to read one more comment from Uba Jihad, who says, I earnestly hope that the COVID-19 will catalyze the change that we need for our society. So
Absolutely.
Just echoing everything that we're saying. But Jake, thank you for your incredible work. We look
Thank you
forward
so much.
to milestones, more awards, more campaigns, and more opportunities to support you and the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Thanks for curating this future conversation. It means a lot to you, but to me as well, and lots of people who will be very inspired by this. So all the best. Thank you so much, and well done with other people you're going to be interviewing as well. I look forward to catching up on them.
Yes, please join us. Make sure you stay tuned,
I will.
everybody. All right.
All right.
Take care. Bye, Jay.
Take care. Yeah, bye.
All right. Wow, what a wonderful conversation. So there you have it. So that's Jake Effoduh, who won the Community Action Prize in 2014. I see all the love pouring in. Faliham is saying, we hope you recorded it. Yes, we sure did. It will be on the IGTV page. This is me signing out, but not before I urge you to please make sure that you nominate your COVID-19 heroes, your Africa COVID-19 heroes, whether they're frontline workers, people who've been volunteering, or somebody like the doctor that Jake referred to, who's creating something in their own house, creating hand sanitizer to distribute for free in their community. Nominate that person at beatingcorona.africa. We can do this. It's very important for us to celebrate those who are doing good work, because in doing so, we encourage many more people to join in on the action. So until next conversation, I know Temi-san will be back again tomorrow, holding it down. I'm Vimbai, _Vimbai. Thank you so much for your time and your data, darling. We appreciate the sacrifice. Bye, guys.